Good evening from the Hall of the Great Debates in Ecbatana, Persia. I'm Franya, your moderator, and I welcome you to the debate between Esther, Queen of Persia, and Haman, the Grand Vizier of Persia. This debate was produced by Lauren Bricker and written by Neal Starkman. It is brought to you by PECC, the Persian Empire Chamber of Commerce, whose motto is, "Join us if you know what's good for you." Tonight's debate will be about both domestic and foreign issues. It will follow a format designed by the writer. In addition to my questions, we'll also take some questions from the audience, and both debaters will have 1-minute closing statements. Let us now welcome our two debaters, Esther, Queen of Persia, and Haman, the Grand Vizier of Persia. Welcome to you both. Let's begin the debate by asking about what is apparently the biggest topic of contention, and that is the Jews. What are the major differences between the two of you about how you would treat the Jews? Each of you has 1 minute to start. A toss of the dark has determined that Queen Esther will go first.
I want to thank you, Franya, and as well as the Chamber for this opportunity to be here and impart accurate information about a variety of matters. My fellow Persians, just 3 days ago, the Grand Vizier Haman asked my husband, King Ahasuerus, for official permission to kill all the Jews. My husband, obviously misled, assented, and the decree reads in part, and I quote, "On the 13th day of the month of Adar, you are to kill all Jews, young and old, women and children," end quote. Haman would show no mercy to any Jew, and for one simple reason: he does not like Jews. He's never liked Jews, and yet, to my knowledge, no Jew has ever done him harm. What can be behind Haman's malice? What would impel him to desire the death, to take one example, of a baby girl, a cute, smart, Jewish baby girl who would never do anything to displease her parents, even were she to grow up and marry a mensch outside the faith, for very good reasons. This is madness, and not the angry kind, the crazy kind.
Grand Vizier Haman, 1 minute.
I too would like to thank you, Franya, and the Chamber for the opportunity to respond to the outrageous claims made by the Queen, and I say that as a loyal subject. My fellow Persians, I take these actions only to fulfill my obligations to the King and to our great nation. For it is an absolute fact that the Jews plan to overthrow our government, the Queen included. I am told that it is but a matter of days before this attempt is made, and that is why I have acted so swiftly to secure the decree. Obviously, I take no pleasure in directing that anyone be killed, much less a baby girl. Baby girls are marvelous. But I took an oath to protect this king and this Persia we all love so deeply. I would be remiss if I ignored the warnings and instead fell victim to the sentimentality and favoritism that have so far characterized the reign of this queen. I do not know why she lavishes such attention upon a tribe who constantly see themselves as victims, who take no responsibility for their actions, and who always seek help from the government without contributing anything in return. Yet she does.
Queen Esther, please respond directly to what Grand Vizier Haman just said about your sentimentality and favoritism.
If sentimentality involves the desire to keep innocent men, women, and children from being slaughtered, then I confess to being sentimental. If favoritism means trying to shield an oppressed minority from the ruthless ambitions of a madman, then I confess to playing favorites. I would ask this of my opponent: would you not do the same were the sandal on the other foot? Would you not seek to protect those whom you consider vulnerable? Or are you so out of touch, Vizier, that you would ignore their plight?
Both of you have spoken about a lot of different things, and we're going to try to get through them in as specific a way as we possibly can. But first, Grand Vizier Haman, do you have a question that you'd like to ask the Queen directly about something she just said?
Certainly. I ask the Queen this. Do you deny that Jews have no respect for our laws, that they in fact flout our customs in our faces, that they take an enormous number of holidays from work, including every 7th day, thus damaging the Persian economy? That they refuse to bow to their leaders, that they are possessed with an abnormal abundance of sarcasm, that they...
All right, let's give Queen Esther a chance to respond. Queen Esther?
Oh, like sarcasm is so horrible. I'm sure it will be the death of us all. I know what this is all about now. Oh no, this is not about secret plots to overthrow the government, nor disrespectful customs, nor even the impeding of our economy. No. It is about pride. Several days ago, in the king's court, a Jew by the name of Mordecai refused to bow down before the Grand Vizier Haman. Haman predictably was insulted. And why was Mordecai reluctant to bow down before him? Because Haman was wearing a medallion with an idol upon it, and Jews do not bow down to idols.
That is utterly ridiculous, and were you but a commoner, I would pull out your tongue and roast it with pita for dinner. Figuratively speaking, of course. It is clear that Mordecai's behavior bordered on the treasonous. It was a reflection of the insolence that Jews have towards our duly installed officials. Does no one remember last year's Bahram God of Victory parade and the incident of the flying matzo balls? In any case, how is it that our fair queen takes such an unseemly and unnatural liking to this Mordecai?
Does the knowledgeable Grand Vizier not know that Mordecai once saved the life of the king by exposing a plot to kill him?
I am the Grand Vizier. I am a severe Grand Vizier. So naturally, I was well aware of the plot. Moreover, I supported Mordecai in exposing it. But he is still a Jew. And if he hadn't saved the king, then someone else surely would have. Besides, how do we know that Mordecai himself didn't set up the plot and then expose it to take all the credit, huh? How do we know?
Let's move on to another topic, and that is the stability of the Persian economy. And Grand Vizier Haman, let's begin with you this time. What are the current threats to the stability of the Persian economy? And what would you do to oppose those threats?
My friends, our economy has been suffering since our exalted ruler Ahasuerus took Esther as his queen. I ask all Persians, are you better off now than you were when Vashti was queen? I mean no disrespect to the high office. I love the high office. But we know very little about the origins of Esther, for she has provided no documentation, no certificate as to the location of her birth, nor has she shed any light on the constituency of her family. There are some would doubt if she is even Persian.
Could we get back to the question of the economy, please?
But I will dwell on that no longer. The economy is something that I, as Grand Vizier, am very well experienced in. My professional background has been one of economics and vizierates. I know how to fix this economy, and I have a 3-step plan to do just that. Step 1 is to kill all the Jews in the kingdom. Step 2 is to prevent any Jews from ever setting foot in the kingdom again by erecting a pointy-sharp fence around the entire circumference of Persia. And step 3 is to get the economy going again. If I am allowed to implement this plan, then our economy will return to the pinnacle where it rightfully belongs. If for some reason I am not allowed, then I fear our economy will be as the Jewish Job, swallowed whole by a whale of a depression.
And your response, Queen Esther?
Grand Vizier, you are not a Job creator. Franya, I would like to remind everyone that before Haman was appointed Grand Vizier, he controlled the business called Banga Capital, which in turn was responsible for many of our merchants losing their wares as well as their livelihoods to guilds in the East. And isn't it interesting that only 7 years in the past, Banga Capital did a great deal of trade with the Jews. The same Jews Haman now castigates. What chutzpah! Oh, I mean, what nerve! It seems as if Haman has changed his mind quite drastically. He is clearly not a man to be trusted.
That quote was taken completely out of context, and were you not the queen, I would pluck out your eyes and serve them with baklava for dessert! Figuratively speaking. I was referring to a small minority of Jews who are proud to be business partners with us, not the vast majority of Jews who live off the welfare of the government, who, might I say, live off the welfare queen. Why, I'm not even certain they were Jews. I just assumed they were because they always wore those frayed scarves. In retrospect, they may have been merely citizens not able to afford new scarves. I love scarves.
Queen Esther, do you have anything to say about stabilizing our economy?
Yes, I do, Franya. King Ahasuerus inherited a devastating economy from his predecessor, and he's been succeeding in getting us on the path to recovery. But this takes time, and we must be patient. Financial security and ample pocket change will come for everyone. We must hope for that change. The so-called economic plan Haman espouses is the epitome of shallowness. There's nothing in it. It reminds me of the placard held up by Amra the Legless. Where's the falafel?
There you go again. We must protect the Jews. The Jews are wonderful. Let's honor all the Jews. What is this obsession of yours, my queen? One would think that you had some secret history that you have not shared with us.
Let's move on to our next topic, one that's been quite controversial. This past year, our outpost in Thrace was temporarily overrun by some rogue Scythians. Our military leader, Cyaxares, was killed. Some say that Ahasuerus did not act quickly enough when he learned of the uprising. Queen Esther, how do you respond to the critics of our king?
Franya, I don't know if you're familiar with the geography of Persia, but Thrace is far from us. It took almost an entire moon cycle for word to reach the palace. My husband, the king, reacted with the utmost speed, and even as we speak, the Scythians have been beaten back. Of course, we all mourn the loss of the valiant Cyaxares, but when you're a powerful nation, these incidents will happen. The principal way to combat such enemies is to remain strong and true to our values, and as the Jews say, not get verklempt.
Grand Vizier?
I have no doubt that our good King Ahasuerus acted in the most propitious way he could, given the circumstances. However, he was prevented from learning of these events sooner by Jewish bandits who ambushed the messengers, thereby delaying the news and the inevitable retribution. Roving hordes of Jews now populate much of the Persian countryside. And when one of these Jews is captured, as recently occurred, what is his feeble excuse? According to him, he was searching for an eatery with oriental fare. How likely is that? I say to you that as our good General Cyaxares stood tall and alone against the invading Scythians, so do I, Haman, stand tall and alone against the murderous Jews who wreak havoc upon our society.
Haman, I ruled over Cyaxares. I knew Cyaxares. Cyaxares was a friend of mine. Haman, you are no Cyaxares.
Let's move to our final topic, and that is health. Grand Vizier, you were bound to obey the dictates of King Ahasuerus when he pronounced that all citizens of the realm would henceforth receive, at little or no cost, the benefits of surgeons, herbalists, and diviners, regardless of the citizen's history of injuries and disease. But some say that privately you have had misgivings and so have resisted implementing the policy. Some claim that the cause of your hesitation is your belief that the king was unduly influenced by Queen Esther. Would you address that, please?
I would be happy to, Franya. I do not believe that the king had a free hand in developing this policy, which I have called Esther care. I believe that our queen has led him astray. The last thing our government needs is to expand our already burgeoning deficit, and that is exactly what will happen if this policy is put into practice. People tell me that it is quite expensive to hire a surgeon to plunge his knife into a body, remove the deadly spirits, and attempt to sew the patient up again, particularly with carpet thread. In addition, medicinal herbs have risen in price since the Greeks unionized. All of this, you must be aware that diviners now charge by the word rather than by the incantation. If Esther care is put into place, patients' fates will be determined by government spirit panels, something no sane person wants. In short, only a few can afford premium health care, and that's how it should be. If you haven't worked hard enough to pay for medical treatment, then, as my father used to say, tell it to Angry Manu, the evil spirit. Human.
Queen Esther?
Yes, thank you, Franya. This is exactly what you can expect from the Grand Vizier Haman. Total apathy when it comes to those less fortunate than he is. If the least among us is infused with evil spirits, then I believe it is our government's responsibility to seek the expulsion of those spirits. If the wealthiest rug vendors among us, perhaps 1% of the population, could contribute just a bit more to the common good, then the poorest spittoon cleaners among us would live just a bit better. This is what it means to be Persian. To be good neighbors, to help each other out, to live in harmony.
You're talking about class warfare.
No, you are.
No, you are. I'll bet you 1 trillion derricks that you are. Right here, right now. Bet?
Let's move on to a few questions from the audience, shall we? These were submitted beforehand, and I have chosen the ones that the two debaters will address. The first question comes from Umaya, who has a question for Haman about babies and rations.
Yes, thank you. I'm a little nervous.
That's all right. Take your time.
What I want to ask Grand Vizier Haman is this. Mothers, nurses, and physicians all receive higher rations if they deliver boys rather than girls. Sometimes twice as much. My question for you is this. Do you think this is right?
Thank you for your question. I know that it must have been especially difficult for you as a woman to ask. The answer is yes. It is right, because males contribute at least twice as much to our society as females do. In fact, the 2-to-1 allotment of rations is probably generous to the mothers who deliver girls. But I'm not seeking to change that.
Queen Esther, do you have anything to add?
Only that the Grand Vizier's policies belong back in the last century. Any civilized Persian will tell you that when it comes to contributing to society, females do as much as the society will allow, and often more. If Haman thinks different, he's got his head up his tuchus. I mean his posterior.
I'd like to point out that I've never said that females don't contribute to society. They certainly do, and I respect every one of them. My mother was a female, and she was delightful. I believe that women are inferior with certain exceptions, one being my mother. I've been very clear about that. And I certainly don't denigrate women, even the miserable wenches who turned me down when I was but an impressionable adolescent. Enough about me.
Now let's go to Thriti, who has a question for the Queen. Thriti.
Thank you. My question to you, Queen Esther, is this. There's a rumor floating about that you have strangely close ties to the Jewish community, and that's why you defend the Jews with such zeal. Some even say you're Jewish yourself. Can you put this rumor to rest once and for all?
Queen Esther, would you care to respond?
Yes, of course I would. Well, I would just say this. Either King Ahasuerus would or would not marry a Jew. If he would, then were I a Jew, the union would be sanctioned by the highest personage in the realm, which is Ahasuerus. If he would not, then clearly I could not be a Jew. I hope this answers your question. The more important issue is whether Haman should be allowed to wipe out the Jewish people for no other reason than an imagined slight. I'd like to stay focused on that issue.
We have time for one more question, and it's from Kata. Kata, your question, I believe, is directed to both Queen Esther and Grand Vizier Haman?
Yes, Queen Esther, Grand Vizier Haman, thank you for the opportunity to ask you this question. Some say that the Jews are the smartest, cleverest, funniest, most educated, most artistic, and most altruistic people in the realm. Others say that they're not. What does each of you say? And I'd like you to respond as if you were a Jew. Thank you.
Grand Vizier, why don't we start with you, as a Jew?
Well, Franya, I am not a Jew, something I presume Queen Esther will declare as well. But if I were a Jew, I'd probably accept that description. Why? Because as a Jew, I would be arrogant, boastful, and condescending. I'd be waiting for the right opportunity to foment a rebellion against the king and his servants.
And Queen Esther, please answer as a Jew.
Boy, I believe a Jew would respond thusly. We do not seek an overthrow of good King Ahasuerus and good Queen Esther. That is not our shtick. We seek only to live in harmony with our fellow Persians and to contribute to the well-being of the state. You should not fear that which you believe is different. You should not withdraw from becoming our friends, our business associates, our family members. And you definitely should not take up arms against us. Nothing good will come of that. I repeat, nothing good will come of that. Trust me on that one.
Thank you, Queen, and thank you, members of the audience who submitted questions. That brings us to closing statements. Grand Vizier Haman, you won the toss of the dark and you elected to go first, so you have a closing 1 minute.
Thank you, Franya. My fellow Persians, I am your Grand Vizier, and before that, I was a successful merchant. I know how to get Persia back on its feet again, and that is to get rid of the Jews. On Adar 13, I intend to carry out the king's edict and remove Jews from existence for the good of all of us, except for the Jews. I expect full support from the government, as well as at least 53% of the populace. Again, except for the Jews. Years from now, people will look back on us as the architects of our great nation's rebirth and say, Haman did the right thing. What a guy. Naturally, Jews would not be looking back and saying this. I look and ask for your support because living in a Persia controlled by Jews would be intolerable. Besides, how would a Jewish Persia expand her empire? By nagging countries into a submission? That was humor of a political nature.
And Queen Esther.
Listen, people. Jews are the driving force of our economy. We would be in a much more dire situation without their contributions to our banking district, our theater district, our deli district. I tell you this, Haman's plan will not be carried out. I shall go to King Ahasuerus and persuade him to arm the Jews so they can defend themselves. And Ahasuerus will listen to me. Why? Because I am a Jew. I am a judicious defender of people's rights. And I am also a jubilant victor when I know that I have saved thousands of lives. People, tell your king that you agree with me and that you think Haman is evil and his name should be cursed forever. Shalom Alechem. As the Jews would say, that's what I hear from people I don't know very well. Thank you.
And thanks to both of you, Queen Esther and Grand Vizier Haman. The 13th of Adar is only days away, and lots has already happened. Lots and lots. Who knows what the future will bring? The destruction of the Jews, or the eternal cursing of the name of Haman? For now, from Ecbatana, I'm Franya. Thank you, and good night.